The sun crawled over the horizon like a tired beast that had seen too many mornings, spilling light across the cracked earth of the prairie where Samuel Whitlock's ranch sat forgotten by God and man alike. The fences leaned like drunk men, the barn's roof sagged with age, and the wind carried dust instead of promise. Samuel was 34 and looked 50, with eyes too weary for his years and hands so calloused they no longer felt splinters. His cattle were dying off, one by one, and he could almost hear the land whispering that it was time to give up. But Samuel wasn't built to give up. The Whitlocks had never been rich, never been powerful, but they were proud men, the kind who'd dig another hole instead of begging for water. Still, pride didn't put food on the table. His last remaining cow had calved too early and died, and with her went his final source of milk and trade. The ranch was done, unless he found a way to trade, to barter, to start over. That chance came in the most unlikely way, with a rumor from the dusty trail leading to Dry Creek Junction. They said an old man named Kramer had a daughter no man wanted to marry. She was strong as a bull, broad in the hips, quiet in the mouth, and wealthy in cattle. She'd been born big, they said, and bigger still she grew, till even the town preacher joked that her shadow scared the sun. Samuel didn't laugh when he heard it. He listened, because the same tongues that mocked her also whispered that her father had offered a dowry, one good milking cow, to any man who'd take her hand in marriage. That cow could save him. The thought chewed at him for days, till pride and hunger fought their last battle inside him. Hunger won. He saddled his horse, Button, a bony mare that had seen better winters, and rode toward Dry Creek, where desperation and opportunity often met like old lovers pretending to hate each other. The journey took half a day, through plains that shimmered like heat ghosts. When he arrived, Kramer was sitting outside a crooked house, smoking a pipe carved from bone, his eyes small and sharp beneath a hat older than Samuel himself. The man sized him up, spat into the dust, and said, "You here for my cow, or my daughter?" Samuel swallowed. "Both, sir." "In that order, maybe." Kramer chuckled, a sound like boots grinding gravel. "She's in the barn. Won't talk much. Don't look at her too long. She don't like that." Samuel nodded, heart pounding. He wasn't marrying for love. He was marrying to survive. But when the barn door creaked open and the shadow inside shifted, his breath hitched. The woman stepped into the light, not a girl, not delicate like the preacher's daughters, but solid and heavyset, with arms strong enough to wring a steer's neck. Her hair was braided tight, her face plain but stern, her eyes deep brown and unreadable. "Name's Ruth," she said simply, her voice low but soft, carrying an ache he didn't expect. She didn't look embarrassed, just tired of being stared at. Samuel removed his hat. Samuel Whitlock. For a long moment they just stood there, two broken souls sizing each other up. Then she said, "You're marrying me for a cow, ain't you?" He froze. "I need the cow." "Good," she said, eyes narrowing. "I need a name that don't shame me." "Seems fair." They married that same evening, under the open sky, with only her father and a preacher too drunk to bless anything properly. There was no kiss, no music, no feast, just a handshake and a promise. Kramer handed Samuel the rope to the cow, a fine Jersey, fat and healthy, and said, "You take her and my daughter both, one for milk, one for work. Don't mix up which is which." Samuel felt the sting of the man's laughter, but Ruth said nothing. She just picked up her small bag and followed him to the horse. The ride back to his ranch was quiet, save for the lowing of the cow and the crunch of hooves on gravel. Samuel tried to make small talk, but every word fell flat in the wind. Ruth seemed lost in thought, staring off at the dying horizon, her expression unreadable. When they reached the ranch, Samuel helped her down. "Ain't much, but it's home," he said. She looked around at the broken fences, the leaning barn, the empty corral, and said, "Home's where you don't get turned away." "That'll do." She worked hard that evening, surprising him. Before he could even unhitch the wagon, she'd already fetched water, mended a trough, and started a small fire for supper. She cooked beans and bread, nothing fancy, but it smelled like life itself. Samuel ate quietly, wondering what kind of woman he'd married. She wasn't cruel, she wasn't shy, she just carried silence like a burden too heavy to set down. When the night fell, and the stars spread like spilled salt across the sky. Samuel stood outside the cabin, breathing in the cool air. He turned to her and said awkwardly, "I guess it's wedding night." She looked at him from the doorway, her face calm. "Guess it is." He smiled nervously. "I'll make a fire inside. It gets cold." But when he reached for the door handle, she stepped inside and shut it. He waited, confused. Then came the sound, a soft click. The lock. Samuel blinked. "Ruth." Silence. "You all right?" Still nothing. He knocked once, twice, then gave up. He stood there under the stars, listening to the coyotes howl, somewhere far away. She had locked him out on their wedding night. He slept in the barn with the cow, which, in some twisted irony, was the reason he'd married in the first place. As he lay there on the straw, staring at the rafters, he felt something shift inside him. Shame, confusion, maybe even curiosity. Why had she done that? Was it disgust, fear, or something deeper? The night stretched long, and the silence between them thickened like the desert heat. Morning came slow. When he woke, Ruth was already outside, splitting wood like a man twice her size, sweat shining on her forehead. She didn't mention the locked door, and neither did he. Instead, she looked at him with quiet eyes and said, "Coffee's ready. You want sugar?" He didn't, but he nodded anyway. As days turned into weeks, Samuel noticed things about her. The way she hummed softly while working. The way she always kept her distance. The way she watched the sunset as if waiting for someone who never came. She was strong, but there was sadness behind that strength. Sometimes at night, he'd hear her whisper in her sleep, "I didn't ask for this." He'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering what story she carried before him. The cow thrived, and with her, the ranch began to breathe again. Fences were fixed, pastures greened, and Samuel started to see a future. But that locked door still haunted him. One evening, a storm rolled in from the west, the kind that tears the sky apart. As thunder cracked and rain pounded the roof, Ruth stood by the window, trembling. Samuel, sitting by the fire, saw fear in her eyes for the first time. He rose slowly. "Ruth, what is it?" She whispered. "He's coming." The words froze his blood. Her gaze drifted to the dark horizon where lightning flashed. "My past," she said, "and you ain't ready for it." Before he could speak, she walked to the door and bolted it again. Outside, the wind howled like a dying beast, and Samuel realized this marriage, this bargain he thought was for a cow, had just turned into something far more dangerous. As the storm raged, the lantern light flickered, and somewhere deep in the night, a lone rider appeared on the ridge, his silhouette sharp against the lightning. Samuel knew then, whatever Ruth had locked behind that door wasn't fear. It was history, and it had found them.